picture this. It's a Sunday. You're in Birmingham. The stadium is like completely sold out, and it's just buzzing with that very specific electric tension that you only ever get from an India versus Pakistan matchup.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you can literally feel the vibration of the crowd in your chest,
Yeah.
right? And that's before a single ball is even bowled.
Exactly. And to add even more weight to this whole scenario, the stakes are just sky high. I mean, this is universally being called the group of death at the Women's T20 World Cup.
Right, and that kind of atmosphere, it fundamentally changes the physics of the game for the players out there. Every single delivery just feels heavy.
Yeah, heavy is the perfect word for it.
Because the pressure, it isn't just this mental concept. It translates into tighter grips on the bat, heavier legs in the outfield. And they're making decisions in fractions of a second that dictate the entire tournament.
Yeah, and our mission for you today is to unpack a match that basically defied all logical flow. We are looking at how India took what can only be described as a disastrous, chaotic opening sequence at the crease and somehow reverse engineered it into this historic, commanding 64-run victory.
Which is still just staggering to think about.
Right. I mean, they ended up posting 170 for 6. That is their highest ever T20 World Cup score against their rivals. And then they turned around and bowled Pakistan out for just 106.
Yeah, you rarely see a team completely flip the script like that. To be completely pinned against the ropes and then deliver a knockout blow of that magnitude. It requires this fascinating mix of technical adjustment, psychological resilience, and frankly, just a few moments of sheer luck.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to actually understand this victory, we really have to start with how incredibly shaky India looked right out of the gate. I mean, they came out swinging. And I mean, literally swinging at everything.
Yeah, the intent was very clear from ball one.
Totally. Shefali Verma steps up, and she hits her very first ball for a massive 6. And if you're in the stands, you're probably thinking, wow, statement made. But then, just 4 balls later, she goes for another big shot and is caught behind off the left-arm spinner, Sadia Iqbal.
Which is, the ultimate double-edged sword of modern power play tactics.
Right.
Because you get that massive adrenaline spike from a first ball 6, right? It signals intent. But then losing a wicket 4 balls later instantly punctures that momentum. It forces the incoming batters into a very, very precarious mental space.
Yeah, and the situation just deteriorates so rapidly. In the 4th over, Jemima Rodriguez is facing the debutante left-arm seamer, Tasmir Rubab. Jemima goes for this highly unusual, almost predetermined swipe-off, only her second delivery.
Yeah, it was a non-choice.
Very odd, and she gets collected right at cover. Suddenly, India is reeling at 18 for 2. Now, I have a hypothesis here, and I want you to challenge me on it.
Okay, let's hear it.
Watching this, it felt like, you know when you sleep through your alarm and you sprint to the exam hall in your pajamas and somehow you expect you can still just breeze through the test? The panic was just palpable.
That's a great analogy, actually.
So is this hyper-aggressive, high-risk start like Shefali's first ball 6 or Jemima's wild swipe, is that actually a fundamental flaw in modern T20 strategy? Because to me, it honestly just looks reckless.
Well, what's fascinating here is that what looks like recklessness is often a highly calculated, albeit risky, response to the tournament structure.
Wait, really? Calculated how?
Well, in a group of death, you are hyper-aware that net run rate could be the ultimate tiebreaker. You know you can't afford to just survive the power play. You literally have to dominate it to force the opposition's bowlers into defensive tactics.
Okay.
So the strategy itself isn't necessarily broken, right? But the execution under that intense India-Pakistan pressure definitely cracked. However, you are absolutely right about the immediate aftermath. When you find yourself at 18 for 2, that aggressive strategy has to instantly pivot to survival and stabilization.
Right. Which brings us to the mechanics of Smriti Mandhana's innings. She steps in, and she's basically tasked with putting out this massive fire.
And it was a raging fire at that point.
Yeah. By the 5th over, she manages to blast 2 boundaries off the spinner, Rameem Shamim, just to relieve some of that choking pressure. She was repeatedly stepping out, smashing the ball inside out over cover. I was watching the replays, and she actually reached her half-century off 34 balls with one of those exact inside-out boundaries.
Right, eventually top scoring was 68.
Exactly. But when we just casually say inside-out over cover, I feel like we are glossing over how technically absurd that shot actually is.
Oh, it is an incredibly high tariff shot. And explaining the biomechanics of it really reveals why it's so special.
Break it down for us.
So when a left-hander like Mandhana hits inside-out over cover against a spinner, she is intentionally backing away from the line of the stumps to make room. She's opening up her hips, making her base totally unstable on purpose.
Which sounds like the opposite of what you're taught to do.
Exactly. And she's using pure hand-eye coordination to loft a spinning ball against its natural trajectory over the infield. It requires absolutely perfect timing. If you were even a fraction of a second late, you just slice it straight to point.
Wow. But I mean, for all that technical brilliance, her innings was built on an astonishing foundation of luck, and Pakistan really, really handed it to her.
Yeah, the missed chances were huge.
Massive. When she was on 27, she was dropped by Elia Riaz, who was running back from mid-off to a ball bowled by Rubab. And then she was reprieved a second time by Sari Jabin at deep mid-wicket, this time off Sadia Iqbal.
This is where we have to look at the psychology of a drop catch, right? Because it is devastating in T20 cricket. When a batter of Mandhana's caliber gets a second life, the whole dynamic completely shifts.
Oh.
Well, think about it. The fielding team did the hard tactical work. The bowler executed the plan, induced the false shot, the ball went up in the air.
And then the fielder just drops it.
Right. Instantly, the bowler feels betrayed by the field. And the batter. They suddenly feel invincible. It's like they're playing with house money. Mandhana capitalized on that exact feeling, transferring the pressure entirely back onto Pakistan's bowlers.
And while Mandhana is riding this wave of second chances, Harmanpreet Kaur is at the other end dealing with a completely different reality. She took a really, really long time to settle in.
She definitely struggled early on.
Yeah. At one point, India was 44 for 2 in the 8th over. Fatima Sana was rustling through the middle overs with spin, and Harmanpreet was sitting on a very sluggish 5 runs off 10 balls. You could literally feel the crowd getting antsy.
Yeah, the tension in the stands was building.
But then she completely shifts gears against the left-arm spinner, Nashra Sandhu. She smashes 2 boundaries in a single over. And that one strategic adjustment helped India score 24 crucial runs in overs 7 through 10.
And that gear shift is largely about reading the pitch conditions and the bowler's tendencies. Harmanpreet recognized that Sandhu was dropping the ball just a fraction short.
Okay, so that gave her extra time.
Exactly. It allowed her to rock onto the back foot and use the depth of the crease. But the mechanics of T20 cricket dictate that momentum is incredibly fragile. Just as you establish dominance, the math of the game can violently turn against you.
Which perfectly explains the massive, dramatic momentum vacuum that happened next. Because, causal link here, just as India seemed invincible, Mandhana's aggressive luck finally ran out.
It had to end eventually.
Right. She hits out to long on, ending her run at 68. And I can only describe the feeling as taking your foot entirely off the gas pedal while driving up a steep hill. The forward momentum just vanished, because 3 balls later, Sadia Iqbal strikes again, stumping Bharti Fulmali.
Yeah, the sources refer to that as a double delight for Pakistan. And tactically, it is an absolute masterstroke.
A double delight, yeah. Why is the stumping so impactful there?
Well, a stumping usually means the bowler has completely deceived the batter in flight, basically pulling them out of their crease. It forces the batting team to hit the reset button completely.
But the thing is, India could not reset. Harmanpreet then tries to force the issue, and she flicks Fatima Sana directly to deep square. So suddenly, India loses 3 wickets for just 14 runs.
Yeah, a total collapse of the middle order.
And then we hit a phase of the game that is mathematically agonizing. India endures a grueling 21 balls without a single boundary.
I mean, if you follow this sport, you know that 21 balls in a T20 match is an absolute eternity.
It felt like forever.
It's 3.5 overs of just pushing the ball around for singles, or even worse, soaking up dot balls. From a fielding side's perspective, this is where you feel like you have an anaconda-like grip on the game. You're just suffocating the opposition's run rate.
But then the script flips again. Enter Richa Ghosh. Now, coming into this match, there were serious questions about Ghosh. She had a very noticeable downturn in form during last week's warm-ups.
Yeah, a lot of people were doubting her spot in the lineup.
Right, but she steps onto the pitch and completely obliterates those concerns. She hammers 34 off 17 balls, and I really want to focus on what she did to Tasmia Rubab's final over. You look at Rubab at that point, and she is cruising. She enters her final over with totally respectable figures of 3 overs, 17 runs, 1 wicket.
A very solid spell up to that point.
Very solid, and Ghosh just dismantles her. She hits 4, 6, 4, 4. It's a 23-run over. Ghosh used this immense physical power in her leg side arc to just muscle the ball. Because of her, India scores 60 runs off their last 6 overs, grabbing 15 off the final over alone to finish at 170.
It was a surgical, brutal display of power hitting. Ghosh targeted the areas between mid-on and deep mid-wicket. She was just exploiting the fact that bowlers under pressure often miss their Yorker length and bowl right into the batter's swinging arc.
I am so curious about the mental toll of this phase. We always just look at the final score of 170. But if you put yourself in the shoes of a Pakistani fielder, what is actually more psychologically demoralizing? Is it a steady, continuous trickle of boundaries throughout the whole 20 overs? Or is it thinking you have brilliantly suffocated your opponent with 21 boundaryless balls, only to get smashed for 60 runs in the final 6 overs?
The sudden explosion is far more demoralizing, without a doubt. It comes down to the psychology of the run chase.
How so?
When a team gets a steady trickle of runs against you, you're constantly recalibrating. But when you squeeze a team for 21 balls, your entire dugout starts doing the math. You anticipate restricting them to maybe 145 or 150. Your openers start mentally visualizing a chase of, 7.5 runs and over.
Right, they get comfortable.
Exactly. Then Ghosh erupts, and suddenly you are staring at a target of 170. It's a psychological gut punch.
Yeah.
It fundamentally alters the chasing team's required run rate right out of the gate, which completely distorts their risk appetite before they even pad up.
Which leads us directly into Pakistan's reply. Because causal link, again, since they are staring down this absolute mountain of 170 runs, their openers are forced into the exact same higher-risk, luck-dependent strategy India used in the first innings.
They had no other choice, really.
None. And it leads to this bizarrely familiar opening narrative.
Yeah, the scoreboard pressure is basically dictating every single tactical decision at that point.
Yeah.
They cannot afford to play themselves in. They literally have to attack from ball one.
And they absolutely do. Pakistan starts incredibly fast, surging to 37 for 0 in just 4 overs. Muniba Ali, who eventually tops goals with 41, is looking incredibly dangerous. She is picking the length of the ball early, cutting it away fiercely. But just like Mandhana, her innings is built on a massive, teetering tower of luck.
Oh, the drop catches were just brutal to watch.
Here's where it gets really interesting. In the second over, Muniba jabs at a quick turner from the off-spinner Shriyanka Patil, and she is dropped by Richa Ghosh. Then, in the fourth over, Shriyanka completely tricks Muniba, forcing her to slice a drive to point, and Arundhati Reddy drops a simple looping opportunity.
Unbelievable.
It was so chaotic that Muniba even walked over to scoop the ball, literally throwing the fielder Kranti God off her feet.
The parallels between the two innings are just uncanny.
It is a complete mirror image.
Yeah.
Both teams' top scorers, Mandhana for India, Muniba for Pakistan, were dropped early, multiple times. Watching it felt like two poker players repeatedly showing you their terrible hands, making huge bluffs, and the opponent just absolutely refusing to take their chips off the table.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we have to examine the concept of contagious panic within a fielding unit. Because fielding errors are rarely isolated incidents, right? They compound.
They definitely felt contagious in this match.
Right. When a dangerous player like Muniba gets multiple lives during a massive run chase, this sense of dread spreads through the outfield. Fielders stop attacking the ball and they start waiting for it because they're afraid of making the next mistake.
And it affects the bowlers too, right?
Immensely.
Yeah.
This is where recency bias kicks in for a bowler. You bowl the perfect delivery, you create the chance, and it gets dropped.
Yeah.
The very next ball, instead of pitching it up and then inviting another drive to try and find the edge again, the bowler loses trust and the fielders behind them. They start bowling flatter, shorter, and faster, just trying to contain the runs rather than actually taking wickets.
Yeah.
But we really have to highlight how well Shriyanka Patil was actually bowling despite the drops.
Yeah, you mentioned she tricked Muniba. What is the actual mechanic behind that? Like, how did she do it?
It is all about deceptive flight. And when we say flight, we aren't just talking about tossing the ball high. Shriyanka imparts heavy topspin on the ball. The Magnus effect causes higher air pressure on the top of the rotating ball, which forces it to dip suddenly and sharply just before it reaches the batter.
Okay, so the ball drops way faster than expected.
Exactly. Muniba swung her bat expecting the ball to be at waist height, but it dipped to knee height. That is why she sliced it off the bottom of the bat to point. The physics of the delivery were totally perfect. The fielding just let the Vath down.
Wow. So with Pakistan surfing on this massive wave of dropped catches and boundary hitting, it became incredibly clear that traditional bowling wasn't going to break the partnership. It was going to require a moment of sheer fielding brilliance to snap that momentum. Because once the spell was broken, it opened the floodgates for a historic collapse.
Yeah, when the pitch is offering some turn but the batters are riding their luck, you need a catalyst. You need someone to actively enforce the pressure.
Enter Deepti Sharma. She is brought in for the fifth over, and the tone changes immediately. She strings together 3 consecutive dot balls. And if you have ever played a competitive sport, you know what that mounting frustration feels like.
Oh, it builds up so fast.
It does. That exact pressure forces Golfarosa into playing a highly desperate reverse sweep, trying to manufacture a boundary, and she is caught at point. Then, in Deepti's second over, Ashisa's offer tries to sweep and hits it straight to Mandhana, a short fine leg.
See, Deepti was systematically dismantling their rhythm. By starving them of boundaries, she forced the batters into playing premeditated, high-risk shots against the spin.
But the absolute turning point of the entire match didn't come from a bowling delivery. It came from the field. It was a direct hit from short third by Deepti Sharma to run out the dangerous, lucky Muniba Ali for 41. It was a truly spectacular piece of fielding.
We really have to break down how difficult a direct hit from short third actually is.
Yeah, paint a picture for us.
Okay, so you are positioned at a sharp angle behind the batter. When the ball is tapped your way, you have a fraction of a second to sprint forward, pick up the ball usually while moving toward your non-dominant side, and throw it.
Right.
You do not have the time to plant your feet and align your shoulders. You are throwing entirely off balance, aiming at a single stump from an extreme angle. To execute that under the pressure of an India-Pakistan World Cup match is a masterclass in biomechanics and situational awareness.
And the impact is instantaneous. From the exact moment of that run out, Pakistan completely collapses. The air literally leaves the room. They lose 5 wickets for just 26 runs in the middle phase of the match.
Just a devastating collapse.
Yeah, India's spinners completely tighten their grip. Debutant Sri Charani shines, taking 3 wickets for 21 runs by exploiting the turning pitch. And then Deepti finishes the match in the 17th over with a devastating 3-wicket burst, eventually bowling Pakistan out for 106. Deepti finishes the match with these astonishing figures of 5 wickets for 10 runs, earning player of the match and becoming the top wicket taker in women's T20 internationals.
Those numbers are staggering. 5 for 10 in a T20 is the kind of performance that defines a career. Yeah. It is the result of just relentless accuracy.
So what does this all mean? I want to push back on the prevailing narrative here. Deepti is getting all the headlines for 5 for 10, and looking at a scorecard, it makes total sense. But wasn't that single direct hit run out of Muniba Ali actually the most important ball she touched all day?
This raises an important question about the anatomy of a middle-order collapse in cricket. Yes, the 5 for 10 is the historic statistical headline,
Yeah.
but your assessment is spot on.
Right.
That run out was the absolute catalyst. It severed the head of the snake, basically, by removing the only batter who had successfully adjusted to the pace of the pitch.
So how does a team mathematically go from cruising to losing 5 for 26? Like, what actually happens out there?
It is a cascading mathematical effect. Spin bowlers like Deepti and Charani thrive on new batters. When an established batter like Muniba is removed via a run-out, the incoming batter has 0 time to get their eye in. They don't know how much the ball is gripping on the pitch.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the required run rate, which was already over 8 or 9 runs and over, is climbing exponentially with every dot ball. Because the spinners know the new batter is nervous, they can employ highly aggressive fields, putting catchers close to the bat.
So the pressure is just everywhere.
Exactly. The new batter is forced by the climbing run rate to take a high-risk shot against a turning delivery before they are physically or mentally ready. They get out. A new batter comes in to face an even higher run rate, and the brutal cycle repeats. That pressure cooker is exactly how you lose 5 wickets for 26 runs.
It is a brutal cycle to fall into, and Pakistan just could not pull themselves out of the spin web. When the dust finally settled, India had not only survived their own disastrous early batting collapse, but they secured a massive 64-run victory. And what that means in the broader context of the tournament is they now have a massive net run rate cushion.
Which is huge.
Yeah, if you follow World Cup structures, you know that in a group of death, a healthy net run rate is absolute gold. It is the ultimate insurance policy.
Exactly. Net run rate changes the way every other team in your group has to play. If another team wants to edge India out of a semifinal spot, they don't just have to win their matches. They have to win them by impossibly large margins. It forces opponents to take unnecessary risks in their own games.
It is fascinating how a single game's margin ripples through an entire tournament. Which leads me to a final thought I want you to mull over today. We live in a modern T20 era that is completely obsessed with the spectacle of the sport. We talk about massive bats, boundary counts, launch angles, and skyrocketing batting strike rates.
Yeah, the cameras definitely love power hitting.
They do. But when you look closely at the architecture of this specific match, It was the dropped catches that allowed Mandhana to score 68 and set a huge target. It was the dropped catches that allowed Muniba to score a quick 41 and threaten that target. And ultimately, it was a spectacular, biomechanically perfect direct hit runout that broke the chase and triggered the collapse. Is it possible that the true kingmaker of a World Cup isn't batting power at all? Is the ultimate deciding factor actually the brutal, unforgiving currency of holding on to your catches and executing runouts under immense pressure?
It is a brilliant paradigm shift. Power hitting gets you the highlights and the sponsorship, sure, but flawless fielding under pressure is what actually lifts the trophy.
Just something to think about the next time you see a team drop a sitter in the outfield. It turns out, sleeping through your alarm and sprinting to the exam in your pajamas doesn't actually matter as long as the person grading the test drops their pen when it counts. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the stats, look beyond the highlights, and keep exploring the fascinating nuances of the game. We will catch you next time.